Foreign policy determines the United States' relationship with other countries around the world and is designed to pretty much promote security, prosperity, and humanitarian goals. Now, let's start off with security that has the main goal to protect Americans from the hostile world. And this goes back to, for example, Nazi Germany back in the 1940s, the Soviet Union in the 80s, and well, more recently, terrorist organizations or non-state actors. The US has done this through immense military programs and intelligence agencies. As we transition to economic prosperity, it has the main goal to pretty much lower prices for Americans when it comes to goods and services. It pretty much involves foreign investment on America, importing and exporting goods, international trade organizations such as the GATT, treaties with Mexico and Canada, such as the USMCA. In terms of human rights, the United States believes it has an obligation to protect human rights and assistance to groups in need throughout the world. So, now that we've encompassed pretty much what it's about, who is responsible for making these decisions? Despite the fact that foreign policy affects the most amount of individuals, it is actually not very democratic. The president is the main figure for America's foreign policies, while Congress has the power to declare war. I found a very interesting article in USA Today that is titled "Biden Can End Forever Wars Only If He Scraps Trump's Policies and Pursues Peace with Iran." Now, before we actually summarize the article, I kind of want to give a little bit of background so we know exactly what we're talking about. As the threat of nuclearization by Iran increased during Obama's presidency, the United States and other nations signed a joint comprehensive plan of action, or also known as the Iran nuclear deal, that pretty much agrees that Iran will discontinue their nuclear program and in return, the other nations will decrease their economic sanctions. However, as President Trump transitioned into office, he pretty much withdrew the United States from this Iran nuclear deal and created a very hostile relationship with Iran that eventually led to assassinations and missile attacks. Alright, so now that we know the background, let's actually break down the article. The article takes a stance that it's in the United States' interest to decrease the use of military force and to move into a time of peace for financial reasons, as well as to prevent the deaths of thousands. Biden called to approach this divide with Iran by what he calls a foreign policy for the middle class that will end wars forever by aiding in more immediate crises such as the pandemic, civilian democracy, racial and economic inequality. Biden hopes to establish a healthy relationship with Iran by rejoining the nuclear deal. However, he must be very careful not to bend the status quo of thinking, which could escalate back to war and eventually put the lives of regular Americans in risk. I personally found this issue very, very interesting because Biden has a very nice opportunity to tackle many of the aspects of foreign policy, such as security, economy, and to help out humans in need around the world. So now, in terms of security, he can prevent the escalation of war and possible nuclear threats, which could protect the security of both American civilians as well as soldiers. For the economy, the war and military efforts have proven to be very, very costly for the United States. And in addition, due to Iran's large oil resources, America could benefit from lower prices in oil. And finally, Biden will be providing support to many Iranians in need who currently experience a very corrupt government, and he could assist them with issues that stem from the pandemic. So I personally do agree with the article's stance and think that everyone would benefit from decreasing the reliance on military efforts. This affects both you and me because it could pretty much end a possible nuclear war as well as lower prices on oil for us. So finally, I recommend Biden to pursue a policy in which the United States rejoins the Iranian nuclear deal that involves high supervision on Iranian's nuclear program and in return remove the sanctions on Iran and provide support on their civilians. So finally, to accomplish this, we would need all the nations that originally took part in the Iranian nuclear deal back in 2015 to sit down, work out, and sign a new deal. Now, a possible obstacle would be that Iran is getting closer to accomplishing a nuclear weapon, and it may not be in their best interest to rejoin the deal. Thank you.